So in normal life, I'm not a huge police guy. I'm not saying I'm anti-police or anything, but in my normal interactions, I am at best suspected of something, at worst chased around by the cops. Trust me, it's happened in my youth. But when it comes to video games, I tend to actually like playing games where you get to be a cop. It's a very interesting dynamic, I feel like, and with given a code of conduct that you have to follow, different rules that apply to you. In my opinion, some of the best police games are ones that have a bit of a sim feel to them. But also, I have to be honest with some of the ones that I really like. They sort of pull on some sort of nostalgia, a nostalgia that I don't really have, but it definitely reminds me of like movies that I've seen that were from the 80s. And this game definitely captures some of it. It honestly feels like if someone took Beat Cop and then expanded it. It feels like this perfect blend of Beat Cop and American Fugitive, which just so happens that the developers of this game also made American Fugitive. So they've made a game where you're the bad guy and now one where you're the good guy. And it actually takes place in the same world as American Fugitive. So in some ways, it's a bit of a spiritual successor to American Fugitive. But anyway, let's sit down and talk about the Precinct and see if it's worth your time and worth your money. But first, please hit that like and subscribe button, help the channel grow. It means the world to me. So anyway, in this game, you play as character Nick Cordell, the son of beloved police chief Nick Cordell Sr. Unfortunately, he was gunned down in cold blood without the murder ever being caught. So being a police just runs in your veins. And even though your father's passing does run through your mind, it is not your core motivation to this game. Really, you just want to be a good police. Even though you do have this celebrity of a last name and a little bit of a lineage, you're still a rookie. And honestly, most of the stuff that they have you do for the first couple hours is very much rookie routine stuff. And I think that this, though, for me, was one of the things that is a good and bad aspect about the game. We'll get into that a little bit later when I talk about gameplay, but just to stick with the story a little bit more, I have to point out some of the completely traditional, almost predictable characters that honestly, it doesn't matter. It really just makes the game more feel like that 80s kind of cop drama. As your partner is an older cop who worked with your dad and he's only months from retirement. You have the typical like angry police chief, and the cops all have like an attitude where they're talking back and forth, they're always talking smack, but yet, at the end of the day, they're just trying to make you tough and make you better. All of that is in the game, and I actually really appreciate it, even if it does come off a little cheesy. I think that's kind of what they were going for. That was the direction of the game. Because even though this game is sort of complex in its simplicity, which is a weird thing to say, but it's still an arcadey type game and it doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think that's really the fine line that this game teeters on. And when it strikes a perfect balance, it's awesome because you do have some aspects, like I talked about before, where it's almost sim like and also a little bit complex, easy enough to understand and not too punishing. So, what do I mean by that? Okay, so the gameplay does have you doing a lot of routine actions, giving parking tickets, giving tickets for loitering, for vandalism, for street fights, anything and everything you can think of. But the thing is when you do apprehend a suspect, you actually have a checklist of things you have to do. You have to check their ID, you got to read their rights, you should search their possessions, you have to actually document their offenses, and then deal with how you're going to resolve the situation. Is it just a fine? Are you going to let them go? Or are you arresting them? And from there on, you can then decide if you want a police escort to come and grab them or if you want to take them in and book them yourself. And you do actually get a little bit of XP bonus if you take them in yourself, although you do lose precious time that you could be out on your patrol because you're only given so much. You only have a shift, which can range between 6 and 12 hours. And in that time, that's when you want to be out writing tickets, busting criminals, and more importantly, collecting that XP. Because As the game goes on, you'll be able to upgrade your officer and you'll be able to get different weapons, different perks, a lot of different bonuses, different vehicles. All of these things come from XP and doing your job. While you're also doing that, though, you're also looking into a major crime ring that's going on between a bunch of different gangs and collecting evidence on each gang. It's sort of an interesting dynamic here where while doing your normal police work, you're also investigating the leaders of these gangs, and you kind of work your way up the ladder. If you get enough evidence on a certain leader, then you go after him. Then you're starting to work on his boss and their boss and so on and so forth until you take down the actual crime boss for that gang. It's a fun little aspect about the game that I think really breaks up a monotony of the game, which, yes, after a while there is a bit of monotony of doing the same things. Rather be on foot doing your patrol, writing parking tickets and stuff. Like all of that is really fun when you first start playing, and honestly a loop that I found enjoyable, but I can see where this would become repetitive and people would get bored of it. So it is nice to have these more epic takedowns of these bosses, because they are too. When you chase one of the bosses, it's going to end in a blistering of gunfire, taking down who knows how many criminals, and even uncovering some things about how corrupt the whole system is. In these sort of boss battles, if you will, kind of break up, like I said, the monotony. Although I will be honest, for me, doing the patrols, whether it be in my vehicle, on foot, or whatever, never really felt too routine because it felt like there was always something going on. Like, this is almost like a Grand Theft Auto type city, except for you're the cop. Like, everybody is wilding out. It actually becomes quite a bit to keep up with. But that's kind of the nice thing about this game. So, let's say you mess up and you don't follow procedure. You don't get like fired or anything, you just lose a few extra XP, and it's never that much to hurt you. Also, you can just drive like a bat out of hell. You're crashing into everything while you're in police chases, and sometimes when you're not. Also, running into like civilians doesn't do anything. So it does have that arcade feel about it. It is not so stifling with the simulation that you're punished for making mistakes. And I really appreciate that about the game, considering how wild and crazy this game really does get at times. Now, as I was talking about being on patrol, this is another issue that I don't know. I have an issue with a little bit. It's just the driving. The driving takes a little bit to get used to. It is really loose and sloppy when you're in your first vehicle. As you progress, the turning and control gets a little bit better, but it never feels like your car is also that fast. It always feels like the criminal is quite a bit faster. And so this is where you have to use one of your techniques, which is support. You can call in different supports from a helicopter, blockade, spike strips, all of those things. In fact, you can actually control a helicopter and be one of those people, which honestly is one of my favorite mission types. It just feels like you're able to conduct this whole operation, and it's kind of fun that way. But I think the main takeaway with gameplay is that, yeah, there are some things that make it a little bit difficult, but they always give you some sort of help, some sort of support. And if a criminal gets away, it's really not a big deal. You lose like 25 XP. On a good patrol route, you earn about 5,000. So what's 25 out of 5,000, you know? As far as performance and visuals are concerned, honestly, I had no issues when it came to the performance. I did play it on my PlayStation 5, actually through the portal. I never had any sort of issue. As far as graphics are concerned, I think a lot of people are torn on this. A number of people said it looks kind of dated. Me personally, I actually like the graphics. I felt like the 80s type game, but again, that's just my opinion. Hopefully the video I captured will help you make your own determination. But for me, I actually really like this game. I really did. I had a lot of fun with it. It came in at about $29. It also fit into that 15 to 20 hour range as far as length of the game, which for me is just about perfect. It really got you excited about what you were doing without staying too long. It never became one of those games that I just wish would end. In fact, in some ways, I kind of wanted a little bit of DLC. But that's just my thoughts on the Precinct. For me, if I had to give it a number score, I would give it about a 7.5 out of 10, maybe even leaning to an 8 out of 10, just because I felt like they did a really good job of balancing the sim to arcade type of experience that I really appreciate. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are. Have you heard of this game? Is this a game you're interested in? Have you played American Fugitive? In a lot of ways, you can get a good idea of how this game plays out. It's not nearly as complex, but it is from the same developers. You can tell they use some of the same mechanics and whatnot. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are down below. I truly appreciate it. Take care, everyone. Love y'all. Bye bye.